Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to read another Curbside collection story, so stay with me and let's see what happens this time. I don't really know how to start this without sounding dramatic, so I'll just say it plainly. Last year, our house caught fire and we've been rebuilding on our life from scratch ever since. We are a young family, early 30s, one little kid, and before the fire we went well off, but we were steady. Bills on time, groceries planned, furniture bought slowly over years. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. Then one night, something electrical went wrong behind a wall, and in a few hours the place we'd built turned into smoke, water, damage, and a smell that didn't leave even after the flames were out. Insurance helped, but only in the annoying paperwork heavy, some of these counts and some doesn't way. The structure was still standing, but it wasn't livable. I'm so sorry to hear this, and I hope this ends well for you. We ended up in an old trailer on borrowed land, not the cute kind people take to lakes in aging, narrow one where you learn to move around each other like a dance because there is no space to pass. Our kid adapted faster than we did. We didn't. Every day felt like we were holding our breath, waiting for repairs, waiting for checks, waiting for the next expense to pop up. At some point, we stopped looking at the front of stores and started noticing the back of them. It happened by accident the first time. We were driving home after another day of phone calls and estimates, and we passed a huge furniture store we used to shop at. Out front, everything looked perfect. Room stacked like life was simple, but behind it, near the loading area, there were dumpsters and stacks of shrink wrap and cardboard, and a couple of big, wrapped shapes that looked like furniture. Well, I think that's something very common that you could find around some malls, like some furniture outside or something like that. So I hope these people find something really good there. We didn't jump out, we didn't even pull in, we just looked and kept driving. Because we're not those people, we don't steal, we don't trespass, and we weren't trying to turn our situation into something heck. But the image stuck, a brand new looking couch shape sitting like trash, and us in a trailer sitting on the edge of a bed because we didn't even have a place to put a real sofa. Over the next week, we started doing something that felt humiliating at first. We drove past the back lanes of a few big stores after closing, just to see what was actually there. We made rules before we ever touched anything. No gates, no no fenced areas, no locked lids. If it looks personal, we walk away. If an employee or security shows up, we're gone. And if anything feels even slightly off, we leave. Well, that's, I guess, some precautions and moves you do, when you're starting doing this, because it really can get humiliating to people, and I know that feeling is not really something comfortable or nice. The first couple times, it was nothing but broken pallets and ruined packaging. Honestly, it was a relief, like, okay, we tried, we can stop thinking about it. But then one early morning, behind a big flat pack store on the edge of town, we saw it. A large dumpster with the lid propped open by clean, thick plastic wrap, no rotten smell, no food, just cardboard, foam, and these big rectangular forms sealed like they'd been a warehouse 5 minutes ago. Okay, let me pause here. I just wanted to have a quick note for you guys. As you can see, there is a shortcut here visualizing the story itself, so I hope it doesn't bother you. It's AI generated, so don't mind if it's look a bit odd. Enjoy the story. We stood there staring like idiots. Under the top layer of packaging was a sofa, full size, still wrapped. One corner of the plastic had a small tear and we could see the fabric. It wasn't stained, it wasn't ripped. There was just a tiny scuff near one leg, the kind of thing you'd never notice in your living room unless someone pointed it out. Next to it, two armchairs bundled together, a dining table still strapped to a base, a stack of chairs with one box corner crashed. It looked like someone had thrown out an entire showroom because it wasn't perfect enough. We didn't celebrate, we didn't high-five, we started calculating like tired people do. Weight, space, traps, how fast we could load without making noise, how to do without hurting ourselves. We slid the sofa out instead of lifting it, used moving blankets we brought and strapped it onto small hitch carrier we already had for holding supplies. The chairs went inside the car. The table had to wait. We didn't have the strength or room for everything. Yeah, I think you need to have some like big car or vehicle to carry all of that stuff out. So definitely you need a couple of turns and rides to grab everything. On the way home, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel, and not from excitement, from disbelief. It felt wrong that this much usable furniture could exist as trash while we were rationing space in a trailer. And here is the part I want to be honest about. It didn't end with one lucky morning. Once we saw that it was real, and once we understood the rhythm of those black lanes, we found more pieces over the next 2 weeks in different places. A wardrobe system behind, a returns outlet with a missing hardware sticker, a cabinet near a donation drop, still boxed, just dented on one side, a bed frame sat behind a warehouse store, wrapped but missing one connector bag we replaced for a few dollars. It wasn't like we hit a jackpot once, it was like we'd stumbled into the fact that discarded doesn't always mean broken, sometimes it just means inconvenient. Okay, these people definitely had a plan, and I hope they found everything they needed to rebuild somehow the living place they have, the trailer, and maybe not just the trailer, the house itself. We started bringing things to the burn house as repairs finished room by room. The first day we put the sofa against the freshly painted wall. I sat down and just didn't move for a while, not because it was the world's best couch, because it was the first time in months our body felt like it could rest. But the real reason I'm writing this is what happened with one of the later finds. Interesting. A few mornings after the sofa, we picked up a narrow cabinet still wrapped in plastic, left beside a stack of flattened boxes behind the furniture store. We almost didn't take it because it looked like too nice to be real trash, but it was out in the open, no fence, no logs, and it had a big red marker slash on the packaging like it had been written off. We got it home, cut the wrap, and when I tipped it slightly to get it through the trailer door, I heard something inside shift. Not a loose screw, not packaging, something heavier, like thick envelope sliding behind a panel. Could be some documents, files, or maybe money. I froze with my hand still on the cabinet door because suddenly it didn't feel like furniture anymore. It felt like someone else's life tucked into the wrong place at the wrong time. And that's where I'll stop this part, because what we found inside that cabinet is the reason we spent the next day asking questions nobody could answer, and why I still don't know if the right thing was as simple as people like to pretend. I didn't sleep much after that, not because of the furniture itself. We'd already gotten used to the strange logic of rebuilding from what other people discard. It was the sound we'd heard inside the narrow cabinet. Not a loose screw or a missing bracket, something heavier, something sealed, the kind of a weight that doesn't belong in a hollow back panel. We carried the cabinet into the trailer like it was made of glass and set it on the tiny strip of floor we called our work area. The plastic wrap was still tied in places, so we peeled it back carefully, checking for damage we might have missed. That's when we noticed the back wasn't fastened the way the other were. 2 small screws set at the edge, uneven, like somebody had put them in quickly. Not factory, not neat, just intentional. That's getting more serious and interesting even. We didn't pry, we didn't force anything. My husband used a basic screwdriver and backened the screws out slowly while I held a flashlight on my phone. The panel flexed and something slipped down behind it with a dull tap against the base. A thick zip-top pouch fell into view, along with a small brown envelope cinched with a rubber band. On top of both was a torn scrap of lined paper, folded twice like a message someone didn't want to write on anything official. For a full second, we just stared at it like the air had changed. Then I opened the note first, because paper feels safer than whatever was in the pouch. It was only a few lines written in rushed block letters. If you find this, please don't toss it. I couldn't take it home. It's not stolen. It's not safe for me to keep. Use it to start over. I'm sorry. Wow, that's literally says that. Wow, that's a lucky message, I guess. No name, no phone number, nothing that made the story cleaner, just that. My husband looked at me and said, very quietly, "We need to treat this like it could bite." And that was the moment the excitement drained out and something heavier took its place, responsibility. We opened the brown envelope next, carefully over the table like we were handling evidence. Inside were folded bills, mostly 20s and 50s, stacked too evenly to be casual pocket cash. Not a jackpot, but it was enough to that my stomach dropped because I could see what it could be do immediately. The deductible we were still dragging, the mall treatment we'd paid on a credit card, the gap insurance wouldn't touch. They not just find the furniture and the cabinet and all of that, which is already seemed to be enough for them, but they found something more inside of that cabinet and it's money. Wow. I would want to find something like that, honestly. Then we unzipped the pouch. More cash, tighter bundled, and a few small items. A key ring with 2 plain keys, and 1 business card from a locksmith in our town, creased like it had been carried a long time. That card did something to me. It made it feel local, real, like whoever hid this had been close enough to know exactly where we lived, even if they didn't know us. We didn't spend $1 that night. We didn't even count it properly. We took photos, front and back, wrote down the date and exact furniture piece we found it in, and put everything back the way it had been. Cash in the pouch behind the panel screwed back on. Then we slid the cabinet into the darkest corner of the trailer and sat there in the quiet, listening to our child breathe in the next room. Because the question wasn't, is this money helpful? The question was, why was it hidden inside something that ended up in a store's discard pile? And did the person who hid it expect to come back for it? That's the question. We sat on that decision for 2 days, which doesn't sound like much until you're living in a trailer and every dollar has a voice. The money felt like relief and trouble at the same time. The note didn't read like a scam, but it also didn't give us anything we could verify. We kept coming back to one simple fear. If we spent it and someone later proved it wasn't truly abandoned, we'd be the ones wearing the consequences. So we did the boring thing again. We made it official. On the 3rd morning, we went back to the store area where we'd found the cabinet and asked carefully if they had a manager who handled returns and disposal. We didn't walk in waving cash or telling a dramatic story. We explained that we were rebuilding after a house fire, that had been salvaging discarded furniture, and that we'd found an envelope hidden inside a piece that clearly came from that back of house flow. The manager didn't look shocked so much as tired, like he'd heard 100 weird versions of "I found something in a return." He asked if we had the item with us. We didn't. Instead, we showed time-stamped photos of the cabinet, the panel, and the envelope, and told him we could bring the cabinet if he wanted to inspect it. He nodded, then said something that made my stomach tighten. We don't open or check every return before it gets processed out. That's why we tell people not to leave personal items inside. His eyes flicked to the note on the locksmith card, and his tone got more careful. He took our contract information, wrote a short incident report, and said he'd check internally if anyone had filed a missing property claim tied to a return pickup. Nothing happened that day, no security drama, no accusations. Just a phone call the next afternoon from the same manager saying no one had reported missing cash or personal items, and that anything found in discarded merchandise wasn't something they could hold as a store because they couldn't prove a customer connection. He recommended we speak to local police non-emergency if we were worried. We did that too again, boring on purpose. We called, explained we weren't trying to file some big report, just asking what the cleanest choice was. The officer we spoke with didn't give legal advice, but he told us the same thing we already knew in our bones. Document everything, don't hide it, and if no one comes forward and there is no identifiable owner, treat it like found property in good faith. He also said something that stuck with me. The trouble comes when people act like they're sneaking. You are not sneaking. That night, at our tiny table, we finally counted. Between the envelope and the push, it was a little over $14,000. What? That much money in the envelope? Like behind the cabinet? Wow. I had to sit down after I said the number out loud because it didn't feel like a real figure for people who were splitting groceries runs into this week and next week. My husband didn't smile right away. He just stared at the bills and breezed through the nose the way he does when he's trying to stay steady. We made a list before we spent anything, not a dream list, a repair list, the contractor deposit we were behind on, the electrician we'd be delaying, the part of remediation insurance wouldn't reimburse. We paid those first, by check or card or any method that left a trail. Then we did one thing that felt almost impossible. We bought our child a new bed, not used, not temporary, watching them climb into the first night like it was a normal thing kids to get to have was when I finally felt the money turn from mystery into help. No one ever came looking for money. We asked around quietly at the trailer lot, at the repair side, even with the one neighbor we trusted back near our Salt Street. Nobody had heard of anyone missing a big amount, nobody had a story that matched, and the store never called again. I think people who at first owned that cabinet might not even know that there was some money inside, so I still don't know who left it. Sometimes that bothers me. Most of time it doesn't, because the real ending isn't we got lucky. The real ending is that we didn't let luck turn us stupid. We moved slow, we kept records, we chose the clean path even though the desperate path would have been easier, and the choice protected us when we were already exhausted. If there is a lesson I'd lend to anyone rebuilding after something sudden, it's this. Pride will tell you to wait for rescue, and fear will tell you to ignore opportunities that don't arrive neatly packaged. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Pay attention, stay careful, keep your name clean, and when something good lands in your lap, treat it like work, not a miracle, because work is something you can repeat. Thanks for reading this. If you share it, please keep the identifying details out. We're not looking for attention, we're just grateful. And if anyone watching has their own rule for curb fines or discarded store items, we'd honestly like to learn from it because we're still learning too. That's it, that's the end of the story. So, also wondering if you guys like the story, if you do have something similar or familiar to share with us, please leave a comment, share or subscribe if you like, and see you next time.